She lived alone for years, until a stranger with a baby asked, "Can we stay?" Beginning. The world had gone quiet a long time ago. Dr. Alara Venn had not heard another human voice in nearly 12 years. Her only companions were the rustling wind sweeping across the red sands, the occasional mechanical hum of her solar harvesters, and the muted pulse of her heartbeat in her ears. She lived in the Outer Belt, a barren frontier colony that had been abandoned after the Great Exodus. Once the outpost where she lived, Outpost Icarus 3, had been filled with families, scientists, children laughing, machines buzzing. But the collapse came swiftly. A chain reaction to terraforming reactors poisoned the air supply and forced an emergency evacuation. Alara had stayed behind, not because she wanted to, but because she was too slow, too stubborn, and too unwilling to leave the life's work she had dedicated herself to. She was a xenobiologist, tasked with cataloging alien flora and fauna. And even after the others fled, she had whispered to herself, "I'll survive." Somehow, years had passed. She learned to maintain the oxygen scrubbers, to distill water for thin, dry atmosphere, to recycle every scrap of nutrition she could. She stopped looking in mirrors because she hated the hollow eyes staring back. Her world was one of silence and routine. Wake, check air scrubbers, inspect algae biotanks, collect solar energy, forage, record findings and logs no one would ever read. Until one night, Alara sat at her workstation, tapping weakly at a datapad, when a shrill alarm pierced the quiet, an approach beacon. Her first thought was hallucination. Her second was malfunction. But when she checked the monitor, her pulse nearly stopped. A transport shuttle, small, scarred, making an unscheduled descent through the thickened atmosphere. Her lips trembled. Impossible. She ran to the observation dome just as the shuttle slammed into the red dust plain, its thrusters coughing blue fire. She half expected it to erupt in flames, but instead, its hatch hissed open, and from within stumbled a stranger, gaunt, clad in a ragged survival suit, carrying a bundled infant close to his chest. Alara's breath caught in her throat. A baby. He staggered toward her airlock, and through the comm speaker, his voice rasped. "Please, can we stay?" Middle. Alara's hands shook as she cycled the airlock. She had not touched another living human in more than a decade, and now one stood before her, his chest heaving. A baby clutched against him like a fragile treasure. He pulled off his helmet, revealing tired brown eyes and dust-streaked skin. "My name is Kale," he said hoarsely. "This is my daughter, Mira." The baby squirmed, tiny eyes blinking up at Alara. Her heart clenched at the sight. She hadn't even seen a child since the evacuation. "Why here?" Alara whispered, suspicion warring with wonder. "No one comes Icarus anymore." Kale coughed, clutching aside. "Because no one would look here. They're after us." "They." The word sent a shiver crawling down her spine. She guided them into her quarters, sealing the bulkhead tight. Mira whimpered softly, and Kale rocked her with desperate tenderness. Alara couldn't tear her eyes away. As she fetched some water and what little food she had, Kale explained in broken fragments. He was not from the old colony ships, but from one of the drifting refugee fleets that had never found safe harbor. The fleets had become targets, attacked by raiders, scavengers, and worse, corporations hunting for assets. "What kind of assets?" Alara asked. Kale's expression darkened. He looked down at the baby in his arms. "Mira." Alara's mind spun. She was a scientist. She recognized the implications instantly. "She's different." Kale nodded once. "Born with markers they want. Enhanced genome. She could survive atmospheres where others can't. Breathe what we can't. She is their future." His voice cracked. "But to them, she's just a resource to be harvested." Alara's chest tightened. She remembered the Exodus, the way corporations had once dictated where people lived, who got oxygen, who starved. She had fled from all of it. And now here it was again, bleeding into her sanctuary. The silence stretched long between them, until Mira let out a tiny cry. Alara startled at the sound, then, almost without thinking, reached out her arms. "May I?" Kale hesitated, then gently passed the baby to her. Alara hadn't realized how hollow her chest felt until the weight of the child settled into her arms. The warmth of Myra's small body, the steady flutter of her heartbeat. It cracked something open inside her that had long been sealed. "She's beautiful," Alara whispered. Kale's eyes shone with gratitude and fear. "They'll come for her. They always do. We've been running for months. I thought, maybe if I found a place no one remembered, we'd be safe." Alara knew better. Outpost Icarus may have been forgotten, but if Kale's pursuers were determined, the quiet wouldn't protect them. Still, for the first time in years, she felt purpose. "I'll help you," she said firmly. The days that followed, life at the outpost changed. Alara had spent so many years moving through silence that now every day was filled with sound. Myra's soft giggles, Kale's low voice telling stories from the refugee fleets, the hum of machines as they worked together to reinforce the old defenses. Kale was resourceful. He scavenged a wreck of his shuttle to patch systems Alara had abandoned long ago. Together, they expanded the algae biotanks, set up decoy signals to mask the outpost energy readings, and repaired an old comm scrambler that would interfere with long-range scanners. But even as they worked, tension coiled in the air. Kale was haunted. Some nights Alara would wake to hear him pacing, whispering to Mira as though apologizing for sins she couldn't yet understand. And Alara herself wrestled with emotions she hadn't felt in years. She was wary of Kale's secrets, yet drawn to his resilience. Watching him cradle Mira with such devotion stirred something long buried within her, the longing for connection, for family, for more than survival. But the shadow of them lingered. The invasion, it came on a crimson dawn. Alara was outside inspecting the solar arrays when the horizon split with fire. A ship, sleek, black, predatory, pierced the atmosphere, its engines roaring like thunder. She froze. Kale burst in the outpost, Mira strapped against his chest. Panic etched into his face. They found us. The ship descended, kicking up clouds of dust as it deployed drones that darted like wasps toward the outpost. Alara's mind raced. The outpost wasn't built for war, but she knew its systems better than anyone alive. Inside, she shouted. They sprinted through the airlock as drones opened fire. Plasma burst, searing the ground around them. The walls trembled as the outpost shields flickered under assault. Kale's jaw clenched. I'll draw them away. No. Alara snapped. You'll die, and she'll be alone. Her fingers flew across control panels, reactivating systems long dormant. Defense turrets whirred online with groans of protest. Old seismic charges buried in the sand armed themselves with blinking lights. The attackers underestimated her. When the drones swarmed closer, the turrets spat fire, shredding them midair. Explosions rocked the plane as seismic charges erupted, toppling machines like broken toys. But the mothership loomed above, unscathed. A voice crackled over the comm, cold, metallic. Return the specimen and you'll be spared. Alara looked at Mira, clutched in Kale's arms. The baby's wide eyes reflected the red warning lights of the control room. Alara's voice hardened. She is not a specimen. And with a surge of defiance, she activated the outpost reactor override. The reactor was unstable. Alara had known it for years. A single overload could unleash an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to fry every ship system within kilometers. But it would also destroy the outpost. Her home, her sanctuary, everything she had clung to for 12 long years. Alara, Kale said quietly, realization dawning in his eyes. If you do this. She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I lived alone for years, Kale. Surviving, but not living. This place kept me breathing, but her eyes flicked to Mira. She reminds me why breathing matters. Kale's throat worked, emotion flickering across his face. Then let's end this together. Together, they initiated the sequence. Warning klaxons blared. Outside, the mothership angled its cannons, preparing to obliterate the outpost. Alara whispered a silent goodbye to the walls that had once been her prison and her shelter. The reactor detonated. A wave of energy erupted outward, tearing across the desert like a storm. The mothership's lights flickered, then died, its engines sputtering into silence. One by one, its systems failed and the colossal vessel plummeted, crashing into sands with a thunderous roar. The drones fell lifeless from the sky. And then there was silence. Ending. The outpost was gone, its systems fried, its walls cracked, its life support crippled. Alara stood amid the ruins, dust clinging to her skin, watching smoke billow on the horizon where the mothership had fallen. For the first time in 12 years, the silence felt liberating. Kale held Mira, his face streaked with exhaustion and awe. We survived. Alara looked at them, this stranger and his extraordinary child, and felt something blossom inside her that had withered long ago. We can't stay here, she said softly. But maybe we don't have to. Kale nodded. There's a shuttle in the wreckage. Damaged, but with your skills and mine, we can make it fly, Alara finished. He smiled, weary but real. Alara reached for Mira, and Kale let her cradle the child once more. The baby's small hand brushed against Alara's cheek, and tears stung her eyes. For years she had lived only for survival, alone, buried in silence. But now she carried purpose. Not in the outpost, not in isolation, but in these fragile, fleeting connections that gave meaning to breath itself. She kissed Myra's brow and whispered, Yes, little one, you can stay. And as the three of them turned toward the wreckage of the future, Alara knew she would never be alone again.